Last Friday night, I walked into my own home and realized my wife and her friends had turned my marriage into a game. They thought it would be hilarious to test how much I loved her by faking a breakup and watching how I'd react. They expected me to panic, to beg her not to leave. Instead, they found out exactly what happens when you play with the wrong man's trust. But before I tell you how it all unfolded, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and drop a comment below if you've ever seen someone learn a hard lesson the way my wife did. It all started when I came home earlier than usual. The sun had just set, and the house had that strange, quiet feeling when something's off. I could hear voices coming from the living room. Female voices, familiar ones. My wife's best friends, Amanda, Chloe, and Megan. The three of them had been glued together since college, and lately, they'd been giving my wife, Emily, some of the worst advice imaginable. I stopped in the hallway, just out of sight. What I heard next stopped me cold. "Just tell him you're not happy anymore," Chloe said, her tone full of confidence. "Make him believe you're done. Guys only realize what they've got when they think they've lost it." Amanda laughed. "Exactly. My cousin did that with her boyfriend. He begged her to stay, bought her jewelry, changed overnight. It totally worked." Emily's voice was soft, hesitant. "But what if he doesn't fight for me?" "He will," Megan said. "Trust me. No man lets his wife walk out without losing his mind first." I stood there, frozen. They weren't talking about some harmless prank. They were planning to emotionally manipulate me, to see how far I'd go to prove my love. And the worst part? Emily was considering it. "I don't know," she said quietly. "It feels wrong." "It's not wrong," Chloe insisted. "It's just a test. If he loves you, he'll prove it. If not, well, you'll know the truth." I felt my jaw tighten, my pulse steadying as anger settled in my chest. They weren't testing love. They were testing control. I wanted to walk in right then and tell them what I thought of their little experiment. But I didn't. I turned around, walked out the door, and sat in my car. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I stared at the house, the laughter of those three echoing in my mind. I'd always prided myself on being calm under pressure. Years in the Navy taught me that. But this was different. This wasn't war. This was betrayal wearing the mask of affection. I drove around for half an hour, letting the anger cool into something sharper. When I came back, the house was quiet again. Her friends had left. Emily was in the kitchen making dinner, humming to herself like nothing had happened. "You're home early," she said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Traffic was light," I said, studying her face. Her eyes darted away a little too quickly. She was nervous. Guilty, maybe. During dinner, she was distant. Every few seconds, she'd glance at me, open her mouth to say something, then close it again. She was rehearsing. I could see it in her posture, the way she twisted her napkin. Her friends had planted the seed, and now she was trying to decide when to play her little test. I smiled, acted normal, made small talk about work. But in my head, I was already planning my response. If Emily wanted to test me, she was about to learn that I don't play games with love. Later that night, as we lay in bed, she kept shifting beside me. I pretended to be asleep, but I could feel her energy, restless, uncertain, maybe even scared. I knew exactly what she was thinking, when to pull the trigger, when to say, "We need to talk." I stared at the ceiling and decided then and there. I wasn't going to confront her. I was going to let her dig her own hole. The thing about people who play games is they always assume they're in control until they meet someone who refuses to play. Saturday morning, I was in the garage fixing a loose shelf when I heard her voice behind me. "Can we talk?" she asked, her tone rehearsed, a little too steady. I turned slowly, wiping my hands on a rag. "Sure," I said. "What's on your mind?" She took a breath like she was about to jump into cold water. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our marriage. I'm not sure I'm happy anymore." She said it just like her friends told her to. I could practically hear Chloe's voice echoing in the back of her head. I nodded slowly, as if I was processing some shocking revelation. "Okay," I said. "What makes you feel that way?" Her eyes flickered. That wasn't the reaction she expected. I feel like we've fallen into a routine. I need some space. To think." "Space," I repeated calmly. "How much space are we talking about?" She hesitated. "Maybe a few weeks. A month." "A month," I said thoughtfully, setting the rag aside. "That sounds reasonable. When do you want to start?" Her expression cracked for the first time. "You're okay with this?" "You said you need space," I said simply. "I won't stop you from getting what you need." Her voice faltered. But don't you want to talk about it? Maybe fix things. You said you're unhappy, I said. If that's true, we both deserve clarity. I'll move into the guest room tonight. The color drained from her face. Tonight. You wanted space? I reminded her. No time like the present. She just stood there, speechless. I walked past her toward the house, calm as a surgeon. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused. If she wanted a test, she was about to get results she'd never forget. That night, the air in the house felt heavy, like the silence itself was watching us. I'd moved my things into the guest room just as I said I would. No shouting, no drama, no pleading. The sound of the drawers opening and closing must have echoed in her mind because I could feel her standing in the hallway, frozen, watching me. When I finally turned, she quickly looked away and pretended to be scrolling on her phone. I didn't say a word. I simply nodded and carried on, and that silence was louder than any argument. The next morning, I woke up early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table reading the paper. Emily came downstairs looking like she hadn't slept. Her hair was messy, her eyes red, and the confidence from yesterday had completely vanished. "Morning," I said evenly, not looking up from the paper. "Morning," she whispered. She sat across from me, waiting for me to say something more, but I didn't. She finally asked, "So what happens now?" "You said you needed space," I replied, still reading. "You'll get it. I'll handle my own meals and chores, and you can do the same. We'll just live as roommates until you figure out what you want." The look on her face was priceless. This wasn't part of the script her friends gave her. She was expecting tears, begging, maybe even promises to change. Instead, I gave her indifference, and that scared her more than any argument could. The first few days went by quietly. She kept glancing at me like she was trying to gauge my emotions. I'd hum while cooking dinner, read in the living room, even laugh at a show now and then. She looked like she didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. On the third day, she tried to break the silence. "You seem fine," she said. "Should I not be?" I asked. "I just thought this would be hard for you. I don't see the point in making something harder than it has to be." I could see her mentally scrambling for a new angle. That night, she left her phone face down on the table, but when she went to the bathroom, it buzzed twice. Chloe's name flashed across the screen. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I already knew they were asking how the test was going. I just smiled to myself and sipped my drink. By Friday, I decided to make my move. I walked into the kitchen that morning, poured myself some coffee, and said casually, "I'm going out tonight." She blinked, startled. "Out? With who?" "Some of the guys from work. Haven't seen them in a while." She hesitated. "What time will you be home?" "Not sure," I said with a shrug. "It's not like we're on a schedule anymore, right?" That line hit her like a hammer. I could see the fear creeping in, the regret starting to surface. She wasn't expecting me to adapt so quickly, to live like she wasn't the center of my world. But the truth was, once someone threatens to leave, you start realizing how peaceful it is when they're not in control. That evening, I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my keys, and left without another word. I didn't actually go anywhere fancy, just grabbed dinner and watched a game at a bar near the river. But the image of me out enjoying myself while she sat home stewing was worth more than anything. When I got back around midnight, the lights were still on. She was sitting on the couch, arms crossed, phone on the table. "You're late," she said sharply. I raised an eyebrow. "Didn't realize there was a curfew. You could have called." "Why?" "We're on a break. You said you needed distance." Her jaw clenched. "You're being ridiculous." "No," I said quietly. "I'm being consistent." I walked past her and went to bed. That single sentence seemed to crush her because the next morning, she was trying a new approach. She came to my room with coffee, acting sweet. "I was thinking," she started. "Maybe this whole break thing was a mistake." "Was it?" I said, sipping the coffee. "Because a few days ago, you were sure you needed time to think." "I just overreacted," she said quickly. "I was stressed." "People say a lot of things when they're stressed," I replied. "But not everyone threatens their marriage." "It wasn't like that, wasn't it? You said you weren't sure if you wanted to be with me. That's not exactly a light statement." She stared at me for a long moment, speechless, realizing I wasn't giving her a lifeline. She was the one who had to do the explaining now. Later that day, I noticed her phone ring again. Chloe's name lit up the screen, but this time Emily ignored it. She was unraveling. The plan her friends promised would make me chase her was backfiring spectacularly. On Sunday, I went out again, no explanation. When I came back, she was waiting in the living room, pretending to read a magazine. "How was your night?" she asked, voice too casual. "Good. Nice to catch up with people. Forgot how fun it is not having to check in all the time." "What do you mean by that?" she asked sharply. "Just that it's been a while since I've done things for myself. You said you needed time to think, and it made me realize I could use the same." Her lips tightened. "So that's it. You're just moving on like nothing happened." "I'm adjusting to the new rules," I said calmly. "You wanted space. I'm giving it to you. That's what love is, right? Respecting the other person's needs." That night, I heard her crying softly in the bedroom. I didn't say a word. I just lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, feeling a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. She wanted a reaction. She got one, just not the kind she expected. Monday morning, she made breakfast and tried one last time to get some control back. "Maybe we should talk about counseling," she suggested, trying to sound hopeful. I looked up from my plate. "Counseling? Yeah, to fix things." "Fix what?" I asked. "You said you weren't sure you wanted to stay married." "Counseling doesn't change uncertainty." "You're twisting my words," she snapped. "No, I'm repeating them." She pushed her plate away, frustration bubbling over. "Why are you acting like you don't care?" "Because caring isn't the same as chasing," I said quietly. "You wanted to know what it's like when I stop fighting for something that doesn't want to be kept. Now you do." I stood, grabbed my jacket, and left for work. Behind me, I could hear her whisper, "What did I do?" The truth was, she already knew. By Wednesday, the tension in the house had reached a breaking point. Emily was pacing from room to room, pretending to clean, but it was obvious her mind was somewhere else. I stayed calm, keeping my routine steady: work, gym, dinner, quiet evenings. The more normal I acted, the more it drove her insane. That morning, she tried a softer approach. She came to the guest room, hair still damp from a shower, wearing the same robe she used to wear when she wanted attention. "Can we talk?" she asked. "We've been talking," I said, setting down my book. "No, really talk." I gestured for her to continue. "I think I made a mistake," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "This whole space thing, it's not helping. I miss you. I miss us." "That's interesting," I said evenly. "Because a few days ago, you weren't sure if you even wanted to spend your life with me." "I was confused," she said quickly. "My friend said—" "Stop right there," I interrupted. "If you start a sentence about our marriage with my friend said, you've already lost me." She swallowed hard. "I know, but they meant well." "No, they didn't," I said sharply. "They meant to control you. They meant to see how much power they could have over your relationship. And you gave it to them." She looked down, tears forming. "I just thought maybe you didn't appreciate me anymore." I leaned forward. "And your solution was to manipulate me? To pretend you were unhappy, just to see if I'd beg?" "I didn't think it would go this far," she whispered. "That's the problem, Emily. You didn't think." I stood, walked to the window, and stared outside. The quiet stretched between us until she finally said, "Can't we just move past this?" "Move past what?" I turned to face her. "The fake breakup? The manipulation? The fact that you tried to test my love like it was a social experiment?" "I'm sorry," she said again, but it sounded automatic. "Sorry isn't enough," I said. "You can't play with someone's emotions and expect a simple apology to fix it." I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she called after me. "Out," I said, "to enjoy some of that space you wanted." That evening, I met a few coworkers for drinks. Nothing wild, just laughter, good food, and a reminder that life could be simple without all the mind games. When I came home around 10, Emily was waiting in the living room, staring at the front door like a cat waiting for its owner. "You were gone a long time," she said. "I didn't realize we were timing each other," I replied. "I just thought we could talk tonight." "About what?" "About us," she said, standing up. "I know I messed up, but I don't want to lose you over a stupid mistake." I shrugged out of my jacket. "You didn't make a mistake, Emily. You made a choice. You chose to trust your friends more than your husband. You chose to create chaos instead of communicating. That's not a mistake, it's a pattern." "Please," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll do anything to fix this." "Then start by being honest," I said. "Who came up with the idea?" She hesitated. "It was Chloe," she finally admitted. "She said it worked for her cousin." "And the others?" "They agreed. They said it would make me feel secure again." "By faking a breakup?" I laughed bitterly. "That's not security. That's insanity." She sat down on the couch, covering her face with her hands. I didn't know how to make you see me again, she said. I felt invisible. I stood there quietly for a moment, letting that sink in. Then I said, if you felt invisible, it's because you stopped showing up as my partner. You became someone who measured love by how much attention you could force instead of how much trust you could build. She didn't respond. The silence between us felt like a chasm. I walked upstairs without another word. The next morning, I left early for work. By the time I got home that night, something in the air had changed. The house was spotless, dinner was on the table, and Emily was sitting there in a dress she hadn't worn in months. She smiled weakly. I thought we could have dinner together. Like old times. I looked at the table, candles, wine, my favorite meal. It would have been touching if I didn't know why she was doing it. You don't have to try this hard, I said. I'm not angry. Then why are you so cold? Because I'm disappointed, I said simply. There's a difference. We ate in silence for a while. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed again. She flinched but didn't touch it. It's them again, isn't it? I asked. She nodded. They keep asking if the test worked. Then tell them it did, I said calmly. Just not the way they expected. Her brow furrowed. What do you mean? Tell them the test revealed the truth. That you found out your husband doesn't fight for people who manipulate him. She set her fork down, tears filling her eyes. You're trying to punish me. No, I said. I'm teaching you what happens when you treat love like a weapon. She stood abruptly and stormed out of the room. I didn't follow. I didn't raise my voice. I just finished my meal and went to bed. Friday night, I overheard her on the phone again. This time, her tone was desperate. It's not working, she whispered. He's not reacting. He's acting like he doesn't care at all. You need to up the stakes, I heard Chloe say through the speaker. Tell him you're thinking about divorce. That'll get his attention. I smiled to myself in the dark. Perfect. She was about to hand me the final move. Saturday morning, just as I expected, she came into the kitchen looking serious, her voice trembling with fake conviction. I've been thinking, she began. Maybe we should consider separating permanently. I looked up slowly from my coffee. Like divorce. Maybe, she said, if we're both so unhappy. You might be right, I said, standing. This week has been eye-opening. Her mouth fell open. What? I think you're right. Maybe we're not compatible anymore. She looked like she'd been struck. You agree? Completely, I said calmly. If this is what you want, I'll contact a lawyer on Monday. She stared at me, speechless. That's not what you expected. I finished for her. You wanted a reaction. You got one. I agree with you. The color drained from her face. For the first time in our marriage, she had nothing left to say. Sunday morning, the house was quiet, but I could feel the tension pressing through the walls. Emily hadn't slept. I could tell by the way her eyes were swollen when she finally walked into the kitchen. I was already sitting at the table, reading the paper, sipping coffee as if nothing in the world was wrong. She hesitated in the doorway, clutching her mug like it was the only thing keeping her standing. Can we talk? She asked. I looked up calmly. Of course. She sat down across from me, her voice barely a whisper. I don't want a divorce. Then why did you suggest it? Because I thought it would make you fight for me, she said, her tone breaking apart. I thought you'd show me you cared. I put down the paper. And what exactly did you expect that to look like? Begging? Crying? Promising to change everything about myself to win back someone who doesn't even know what she wants. I just wanted to feel loved, she whispered. You wanted control, I corrected. You wanted to prove you could make me chase you. That's not love, Emily. That's manipulation. She shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. It wasn't supposed to go like this. They said, you're friends, I said sharply. Always your friends. The same ones who told you to fake a breakup, who fed you this poison. Did it ever occur to you that they don't care about your marriage? That maybe they just like watching other people's lives burn because it makes their own feel less empty? You don't understand, she said, voice trembling. They were just trying to help. Help? I laughed coldly. They convinced you to lie to your husband. That's not help. That's sabotage. She buried her face in her hands. I don't even know why I listened. Because you wanted validation, I said quietly. And they gave it to you, no matter how toxic it was. You trusted their approval more than my loyalty. She looked up, her face pale. Please, can we just start over? You don't get to just reset the game after you lose, I said. This isn't a movie where you fake a breakup, learn a lesson, and everything's fine. Real life doesn't work that way. I stood up, poured the rest of my coffee into the sink, and turned to her. You wanted to see what would happen if you pushed me away. Now you're seeing it. You're scaring me, she said softly. Good, I replied. Because maybe now you'll understand that actions have consequences. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? She called after me. To clear my head. Don't wait up. That night, I went for a long drive, letting the silence of the road calm me. When I returned home, her car was gone. The next morning, she came back looking miserable, eyes red and swollen. I went to Chloe's, she said quietly. Of course you did, I replied, brushing past her. She said you embarrassed her husband at dinner. Emily continued. She said she's never been so humiliated. I turned to her. Good. Maybe she'll think twice before wrecking another marriage. You didn't have to humiliate her, Emily said. I didn't humiliate her. I told the truth. If the truth is humiliating, that's not my fault. She followed me into the living room. You made me look like a fool in front of everyone. No, I said calmly. You did that to yourself. I just made sure no one missed the lesson. You're cruel, she said, tears streaming down her face. No, Emily. I'm honest. Something you should have tried. She sank onto the couch, shaking. So what now? Are you just going to leave me? I looked at her for a long time before answering. No, I'm going to give you a choice. The same one you gave me, except this time, it's real. You can decide whether you want to rebuild this marriage on honesty or watch it fall apart completely. I choose you, she said instantly. I want us. Words, I said flatly. I've heard plenty of those. What I haven't seen is action. Tell me what to do, she pleaded. I'll do anything. I nodded. You're going to call your friends and tell them exactly how their little test ended. You're going to cut them out of your life. No more calls, no more girls' nights, no more drama. Her eyes widened. You can't tell me who to be friends with. I can tell you what I will and won't accept in a marriage, I said firmly. If you want to keep those friendships, fine. But you won't have a husband anymore. She hesitated, tears glistening. And if I do what you ask? Then maybe, I said, we can start rebuilding trust. Slowly, carefully. She nodded, broken but understanding. The next day, I watched her make the calls. One by one, she told her friends that she was done, that their advice had nearly cost her everything. I could hear their voices through the phone. Anger, denial, guilt. But she stood her ground. When she hung up the last call, she looked exhausted but relieved. It's done, she said. Good, I replied. Now we move forward. We started counseling the following week. At first, it was awkward, full of pauses and uncomfortable truths, but slowly, we began to find clarity. She admitted she had let her insecurities guide her decisions. I admitted that maybe I hadn't made her feel seen enough. It wasn't about blame anymore. It was about understanding. Months passed. The tension faded, replaced by something quieter, steadier. Emily was different now. More grounded, more honest. She still had moments of guilt, moments where she'd apologize again, but I always told her the same thing. What's done is done. What matters is what you do next. 6 months later, we were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, the silence between us peaceful for the first time in a long while. Do you ever think about that week? She asked softly. Sometimes, I admitted, but not with anger anymore. I can't believe I almost lost you, she said. You didn't lose me, I replied. You lost the version of me that tolerated lies. She smiled faintly. That's fair. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in months, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, humbled, wiser, and real. The thing about tests, I said quietly, is that sometimes the answer isn't what you expect. Sometimes the lesson is harder, but it lasts longer. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. I'll never make that mistake again. Good, I said, because next time, there won't be a second chance. The sun dipped below the horizon, and for the first time, I believed her. Maybe we had both learned something valuable. Real love doesn't need testing. It needs truth. If you've made it this far, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support keeps stories like this alive, and I'll see you in the next one.